Welcome everybody to our sixth class of Bitachon. Okay, so we're going to be using this booklet. Some people have this book. It's the exact same translation, just different page numbers, and it's a slightly different format. And if you need online, you can get it at dafyomireview.com, or you can do a Google search for Rabbi Yosef Sabag, Yosef, and Sabag is Sebag, and you can look for Shar HaBitachon. It's the fourth gate, the fourth Shar. So he has all of his translations on his website, and you can definitely enjoy. We will be starting on page 32. And for anybody who doesn't, thank you for posting the link on the group. And for anybody who does not have this particular page, so we are on chapter 3. Yeah, chapter 3, and we're on the 5th introduction to bring complete bitachon, bring complete trust. So last week we finished off all about tshuva and how we can change everything. Like we can entirely change our lives and every single aspect of it by just turning and trying our best. Tshuva doesn't mean we have to be perfect. Tshuva doesn't mean that you're going to do everything perfect for the rest of your life. It means that you're given over to try to do better and really try your best next time. And not only that, but the idea or the time frame spent in doing tshuva isn't about thinking about what you did wrong, because then you're taking your thoughts and you're dumping them back in that negative place, right? Because we have 3 garments: thoughts, speech, and action. And if you actually use your thoughts and you think about something that's not holy, or you think about something that's grub or wrong, so you're actually using that thought for something not positive, which is it's actually not good. So how do we do proper tshuva? We do proper tshuva about thinking about who we did it to. So example in this world is, for example, if chas v'shalom, if you know that your best friend really doesn't like it when you're late, or really doesn't like it when you call her a certain name, and by mistake you forgot, or like you were joking or whatever, and suddenly you do that thing she really doesn't like. So instead of beating yourself up and being self-deprecating about how negative and how hard life is, pause, one second, go to Abba, please. And how tough it is, and I'm such a bad person, and then we take those thoughts and we use them negatively against ourselves. It's not about being negative about ourselves or thinking about the thing that we did wrong. We have to turn our energy, we have to turn our thoughts towards who we did it to. My friend, she's so loving and she's so kind and she thinks about me and she's such a good friend. How could I hurt her? I really need to think about how amazing she is. And suddenly it changes from a self-deprecating negative thought pattern to a turning towards her and saying, wow, I really, really, really want to do good things for her. I really, really, really want to try my best to help her, or to apologize and turn this around for the positive for her. So too with Hashem. If chas v'shalom we were to make a mistake and we didn't do something, or we did something we weren't meant to do, so instead of thinking, I'm so terrible and I'm so nasty and I'm so whatever, which then puts you in a negative place, we actually turn and we say, okay, Hashem is so amazing. He has, given me food. He has given me everything. He's made me every single second of the day. I literally exist because of him. And he is so kind. He has given me such a beautiful family, and he has given me all my good friends, and he has given me living Chassidus and all good things. And so therefore, it turns us into a positive place where we want to turn and we want to reach close, a deeper closeness with Hashem. And therefore, we make positive resolutions forward. So we want to reconnect with that loved one. So that's what we finished off last week. Now that we're starting our 5th introduction to bring absolute and complete bitachon, so we're going to start. So we're going to start on the top of page 32. Okay, so I'll read. 5th introduction to bringing complete trust. A person should realize that every new thing that happens in this world after Bereshis is completed in two ways. First, by Hashem's decree and will that the matter should come into existence. So that's number one. Nothing in this world, nothing at all can happen unless Hashem wants it to happen and he wills it to happen. Number two, through intermediate cause and means, some near, some remote, some apparent, some hidden, all of which rush to bring into existence what was decreed, doing so with Hashem's help. Okay, so for example, and I'm going to explain it. Let's just read the example, it'll make a little more sense. An illustration of the causes. Consider the act of drawing up water from the depths of the earth using a wheel system to which buckets are attached and which raises the water from the well. The buckets are the near cause. The remote cause is the man who harnessed an animal to the wheel and compels the animal to move in order to raise the water from the bottom of the well to the surface of the water. Okay, so let me paint that picture for a second. You have a well, right? It's a deep hole inside, or like that goes into the earth. Down at the bottom, there's water. And in order to get that water, you're not going to climb down there. What you're going to do is there's going to be a pulley on the top, and there's going to be a string attached to it. And on the pulley, there's also that same string is going to go all the way down. It's going to be attached to a bucket at the end, at the bottom of the well, right? So Hashem has to will for you to get that water. Hashem's going to say, yeah, Michal Weiss is going to get water through this means right now. Now, the second aspect is that all these different pieces have to work. There has to be, I mean, this example he used was an animal attached at the end of the string that's going to pull the string, right? So that animal needs to be attached. That string needs to be functioning. That pulley needs to be, properly wheeled and going and round. And all the way down to the bucket needs to not have a hole at the bottom, because if not, the water is just going to seep right through. And it has to be attached to the rope properly. That way, when it goes down and it comes back up, it's able to hold the weight of the bucket with the water, right? So all of these are means which Hashem uses to make his will through nature happen. Okay, so number one is Hashem has to will that Michal Weiss is going to drink from this bucket right here, right now. And number two is that Hashem is going to make it that the animal's going to do its thing, the string is going to do its thing, the pulley's going to do its thing, and the bucket's going to do its thing. At the end of the day, it's Hashem, I'll get water. So, I had made a bracha before. Okay, continuing on. The intermediate means between the man and the buckets are the animal, the mechanical contraption of interconnected wheels / gears, which turn each other in series, and the rope. If a mishap were to occur to any of these causes mentioned, in other words, the intermediate means or the closed cause, the intended purpose for which they were designed would not be accomplished, right? So if any mishaps were to happen, if the rope breaks, the water is not gonna, the whole thing's not gonna work. And so it is for other things which come into existence. They cannot be produced by man or anyone else, but rather through the decree of Hashem, and his preparing all of the means through which the thing will be produced, as written, and by him causes are counted. And who is great in counsel and mighty in carrying it out? And it was a cause from Hashem. And if the means are blocked, none of the actions which normally bring this matter into existence will succeed, right? So we don't need to go into that. Okay, wait, I want to make a pause. I want today's shir to be l'zchus refuah shlema for everyone who needs. Everyone who needs, the people that we know and the people that we may not know personally. Everyone should have refuah shlema, and this should be our last year in Galus. This should be our first year in Geula, and we'll go straight from this year straight to Yerushalayim and have a wonderful time with Mashiach. So it should happen right now. Okay, so footnote 35. By him are all the number of means which cause each and everything to occur. And if one of the means were missing, the thing would not occur. And since it is not so clear from the first verse that he is the first cause, meaning he, Hashem, which prepares the other causes, one might think that they are merely known to him in number, meaning he is one and there are two or three or... Therefore, the author brought the second verse, who is great in counsel and mighty in carrying it out, meaning that he is, Hashem himself is greater than all of them, which teaches that he is the master of all causes and the one who carries them all out. So Hashem's so great, and Hashem's greater than all of them. He's not just one of the steps in the process. He is the one that decides for all the steps to work. And if one is still stubborn and wants to say that there is no proof from these two verses, they will teach, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I thought I missed it. They only teach that the causes are attributed to him since he is the creator of everything. Therefore, the author brought the third verse, which teaches that the matter was from Hashem with specific intent for that thing. Okay, this is the part I was trying to get to, because this is a more of a, I think, an example that's relevant to us now. Okay, so starting by the word even. Even for making a loaf of bread, thousands of people are needed, such as workers to plant, to reap, to mill, and to bake. And each stage requires machines built for sowing, reaping, etc. Yeah. And the materials are transported through machines on roads and highways, etc. Hence, even to make a piece of bread, there are thousands of necessary details. And even though we believe that Hashem was behind everything, and that he can do it all without any intermediate means, and can create ready-to-eat bread directly into our home, nevertheless, the author explains that our eyes can see there's a nature and order that we must recognize and understand. Afterwards, he will explain why Hashem wanted things to follow this order. Right? So what we're saying is that, what we're saying is that every single thing, and it's a very famous thing about that we learn, especially in Chassidus, about how we using material things actually makes a Bitachon way beyond what we can fathom, because it's not just the actual physical bread that we're making on Mitzion in our house that we're elevating. It's every single part that made that bread get to our house. From the person, Hashem should bench every single person who is currently stocking shelves and working at all these at Empire Kosher and Koltuv and all these places that are working really, really hard. So all of them get elevated. The trucks that took that bread, all the milling and the seeding and all of that gets elevated by one bracha that we make. So we should realize that there is a seder shtashus, like a certain order in which things happen, and all of them Hashem makes that every single one of them works. I don't know if you guys remember, and it's kind of a joke that's been going around recently, of remember when the biggest problem was that we didn't have lettuce? So one bacteria in lettuce last year was such a disaster. I think it was last year, 2 years ago, was such a disaster that like our whole Pesach was like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? We don't have lettuce for Mar. Here, one teeny tiny coronavirus is making a whole big shebang, and Hashem is in charge of every single aspect of every single step of the whole process. Okay. Continuing on, we are at the top of the page when it says, when we examine the need for a man to pursue means and to exert himself to complete his needs, we see with our own eyes that for one who needs food and proper food is served before him, if he does not exert himself to eat it by lifting the food to his mouth, chewing it, etc., he will not break his hunger. Okay? Huge. We're going to get to that in a minute. We're going to discuss it. Likewise, for someone who is thirsty and who needs water, and all the more so if he has no food prepared until he needs to exert himself through milling flour, kneading, baking, etc. And more so if he needs to buy the food and prepare it. And even more still if he has no money to buy them and will need even greater exertion to pursue means to earn the money or to sell the amount he needs from the object he uses or his own possessions or the like, right? So I hear this a lot. It's very interesting how Hashem puts things in our lives. We just have to take them. So it's funny here. I was saying Hashem is very capable. Hashem makes it all happen, and we have to realize that Hashem is the one that makes it happen. And there's certain times when we're hungry, and Hashem puts the food right in front of us, and we need to just take it and put it in our mouths. And it's so interesting how we have to do that process. And again, it depends to what level of the chain of events that you catch it, that's what. So for example, for somebody who doesn't have bread, but they do own flour, so all they have, not all, but they have to make that flour into bread. But somebody who has the bread in full, they can just, wash it for a maitzi and make a bracha and eat. So we need to take that step. So Hashem does make a Seder Shalshot. Hashem does make a certain, nature in which we have to be a part of the process in order for us to receive the brachas that come from it. And with that said, now we're going to start a beautiful discussion on why man must work for his livelihood. And again, we're not being sexist. Man means the human race. But why we need to work for our livelihood, and all of us together. So, okay. There are two reasons why the Creator obligated, pay attention to that word, obligated a man to pursue means and to exert himself for his livelihood and other needs. Okay? I want to read footnote 36 because I think it's very, very, very relevant in general for us, but also in specific right now in our times. 36. Man does not find his food readily like other living creatures which do not need to pursue cause and means. Highlight. The Creator obligated a man, ... Hishtadlus, exertion, is an obligation. We have to do our part. Okay? It doesn't mean, I'll daven and daven and daven and hope that somehow I'm less hungry. We have to do our part. It is an obligation to exert oneself to provide for himself and his family. Likewise, for all the other things which we are forced to enter into the system of cause and means, it is for two reasons. Okay, and we're going to get into those two reasons now. Okay, so back to page 35 on the top in the main text. Reason number 1. Divine wisdom required the testing of man in the service of Hashem or rebellion against him. Therefore, Hashem tests man with what demonstrates his choice in this: needs and lacking for external things such as food, drink, clothing, shelter, and relations, marital relations. Hashem commanded man to pursue and attain them through the available means in specific ways, according to the Torah and at specific times. What God has decreed that man will attain of them, man will attain fully after the completion of the prepared means. Right? So Hashem wants to give us, we just have to do our part. That which has not been decreed that he will attain, he will not attain, and the necessary means will be withheld. Through this process, his free choice of whether he served Hashem or rebelled against him will be demonstrated through his intention and choice, and the man will then deserve either reward or punishment, regardless whether or not he actually achieved his intentions. 1 second. I lost one of the... Okay. So, number 1 is the fact that Hashem is testing us to see how much we follow in Hashem's ways and how much we do our part towards it. And the reality is that if we are on Hashem's team, and we're like thinking from Hashem's perspective, so that we would know that if we're meant to, we have to do our part. And I think we discussed this in later chapters. We have to do our part. But if we see that Hashem is giving it to us and Hashem is providing us with it, so therefore, if he isn't providing us with it and we really are doing our part, then we have to realize that, that Hashem is the one in charge and he decreed whether we're going to get it or we're not. Also, this footnote 37, I was trying to figure out if I should read it, but we'll just read it. Footnote 37. Basically, I'm going to skim through it. The difference between intention and choice is that intention, we'll just read it. The author said, through his intention and choice, because the status of the choice is according to the intention, namely, if he chooses good with bad intentions, such as choosing good with intent for flattery or boasting himself or arrogance, then therefore it's evil. Likewise, for the opposite, like our sages taught us in Nazir. I wanted to look it up, but they had different time ideas, so I didn't get a chance to look this up, the whole story about Yael. I mean, what this means here in particular. Okay. Number 2, secondly, if a man were not forced to exert himself in seeking a livelihood, he would become defiant, and chase after sin, and he would ignore his debt of gratitude to Hashem for his goodness to him. As written, the harp and the lyre and the timbrel and flute and wine are in their feasts, but they regard not the work of the Lord, neither consider the work of his hands. Meaning they have all this stuff and they don't even think about where it's coming from or that Hashem is giving it to them. But Yeshurun grew fat and kicked. You are grown fat and you're grown thick. You are covered with fatness. Then he forsook God who made him and lightly esteemed the rock of his salvation. And the sages said, it is good, the study of Torah with working for a livelihood, because the toil in both removes thoughts of sin, and all Torah study without work will in the end be abandoned and bring to sin. And all the more so for one who has no share in either Torah or work, nor directs his attention to any of these pursuits. So the message we're trying to give here, which I think we see, it's possible that some people in quarantine might be feeling this way, that when we're feeling that we have this very fast-paced schedule, we suddenly get pushed to a point where we have to make all these things fit within our schedule. And sometimes when we have too much free time, we get lazy. We forget to do things. Our davening is schwach, and our Yetzer Hara gets much harder, and we don't wake up on time, and we don't, either work out or eat well, or we kind of get lax. So if we're constantly working hard, and we have these two main things. Number 1 is that we're working on our Torah study and our connecting to Hashem. So huge shout out to everybody who's here right now. You guys are doing a great job. And number 2 is that we're really working towards something. Whether it's our personal shlichus in this world, so even if you don't necessarily get paid, but you're working towards that, but also a livelihood, actual job that you're getting paid. I just know many people in quarantine right now may not have that availability, but at least you should be focused, and you should turn your time and really think about your time, whether you're accomplishing what you really meant to be accomplishing with that time. And with that introduction, I'll read footnote 38, which I think is very, very, very important. Okay, footnote 38 at the bottom of page 36. From here we see that indulgence in physical pleasures makes a man's heart coarse, thereby causing him to refrain from doing the commandments. And again, we're not saying starve. Okay, we're talking about indulgence, really getting into it. If everything, and again, we're also not talking necessarily about food. It could also be just shopping, or I don't know. Different people indulge in different things, but it's an indulgence. If everything were prepared for man, he would be idle to chase after sin. Also, his body's nature and physicality would tend to kick and be ungrateful for the favors of Hashem due to the delight of his heart. Since everything he would be ready for him, he would think that he is deserving of all of this, and he would not realize that it's from Hashem. I can speak of times that I've gone so well that it's hard to think, wow, thank you so much, Hashem. But meanwhile, sometimes when there's struggles, that's when when we really thank Hashem for even the smallest things. I remember, I think somebody recently, I think it was last week or something, someone recently posted about, things to be grateful for. We have electricity, and we have cell phones, and we have internet, and we have running water. I'm sure many people are very grateful for their bathrooms working, and we have to be grateful for these things, and we have to appreciate them. If everything were prepared and ready before a man, he would not have any free choice, and he would remain forever in the same level, and he would not deserve any reward or punishment. Which, by the way, I speak about this a lot when I do my Tanya course, but it's very interesting how we need to teach ourselves to not avoid discomfort. And again, we're not saying self-torture or anything like that, but growth feels uncomfortable, but it's the greatest thing that we can do. So if we're constantly looking for the easy way out or the comfortable way out, or saying, oh, this is too hard, so we have to realize that we're staying in a level that is not to the level of maturity that Hashem wants us to be. So for example, if a kindergartner would never, ever, ever scrape their knee, somehow we would always protect them from scraping their knees. So then they would never really learn the capabilities that they're able to accomplish, number one. And number two, they would never learn their limits, or the limits of gravity, or the limits of their feet in relation to gravity. And then, chas v'shalom, if they never, ever, ever did it, let's say they're 20 or 25, they try running, and imagine the big boo-boo a 25-year-old could make if he never learned that he could scrape his knee when he was 4 years old or 5 years old, right? So the bumps along the road in our lives help us grow. And this is, I really love this. If everything were easy, we would remain forever in the same level, okay? So again, we don't ask, and we spoke about this in previous classes, we don't ask for challenges, but we're grateful for the growth that comes from challenges. And it sounds insane, but trust me, if the quicker you get in on that mentality, the easier it will be for you to learn the lessons that Hashem wants you to learn in your challenges. So, yeah. Okay, continuing on. In our times, people only want to work a little. Therefore, they lack the necessary exertion and they come to sin. The Creator's intent, and pay attention here, the Creator's intent was that a man works so strenuously from morning until evening that when he returns to his home after a long day of work, he will not have the strength to watch television. I love that example. If we are so focused all day, we have to wake up early and join a Maimer Shir with Michal at either 8 or 9 in the morning. We have to daven like a mensch. We have to, learn our chittas. We have to say Tehillim. We have to take care of our whatever shluchas we're meant to be doing in our world, whether it's shluchas making money in your company, or it's shluchas taking care of people, or it's shluchas and whatever Hashem sent you here to do, you spend your day working on that. And then you come to the end of the day and you want to learn a sikha, or you want to learn a shar bitachon shir with Michal, or even if you want to learn, you want to perfect your skills for your particular shluchas, so you're taking a course, and you fill your day with good things. Or for all of us who are mommies, we fill our days with making sure our families are happy and they're not chas v'shalom dreading the upcoming holiday, and they're really truly enjoying their time together, and they're appreciating the quality time spent together now that we're all in quarantine and we're able to really bond and spend this time. When else are we going to spend this amount of time with our children? Like, really, when else are we going to be home with them and really impart our family values in them and have discussions about all kinds of things. I mean, Baruch Hashem, we've had all kinds of interesting discussions that I don't think I would have heard because my kids spend most of their day in school. So I'm really, really, really appreciating this time where I can be a mommy and I'm really loving it. I mean, I'm always a mommy, but I'm sure you can understand what I mean. So if our day is so full trying to do the right thing and trying to do all of our good things, by the end of the day, we're tired and we filled our time. Every time I give a birthday bracha, or at least I try to, I give people a bracha on their birthday. I say that they should have long years, but they should be fulfilled years. They should be full with good things. So if that is so, we wouldn't necessarily have the time or the desire to then spend it watching television or whatever that means now, YouTube or whatever. But as we said, people do not tire themselves to this extent. So when they return home, they have the strength remaining to sin, and their evil inclination is still in its full power. The purpose of exertion is to weaken the evil inclination, right? So we're working. Hashem makes us work so hard because if we don't work hard, we stop thinking about Him. Really, I mean, I know for myself that sometimes vacation time was the hardest, especially. I mean, now I have kids, so it's a different type of hard, but when I was single and when I was in high school or whatever, whenever I had a break from school, that's the hardest time because I didn't have a schedule for my davening. I didn't have to have a schedule. I had to force myself to put myself on a schedule, and that's harder than being forced by external things to be put on a schedule. So remember that the purpose of exertion, the purpose of filling our time with good things, whether it's being a mother or etc., is to weaken the evil inclination. This is what the sages said. It is good the study of Torah with working for our livelihood because the toil in both removes thoughts of sin. And again, working for our livelihood for a mother that's staying at home doesn't mean working for a livelihood in the same way. Your husband is doing that part, Baruch Hashem, you should be grateful for it, but your livelihood is doing your part in the house. And again, I'm not telling you to be a shmata and a cleaning lady and whatever, but realize that you have your personal shlichus, and Hashem gave you this particular shlichus, which is your child, and your particular shlichus, which is your husband and your marriage, and you need to be working, toiling hard in that particular level of your livelihood. In truth, if a man would exert himself in Torah to such an extent that his evil inclination would be weakened, then he would have reached the intended purpose and would not need to also exert himself in earning a livelihood. But this path is only for special individuals. The vast majority need to exert themselves in both. Exertion of Torah alone is not enough for them. However, the intent for both is the same, namely that the exertion weakens his strength until he is no longer capable of sinning. Hence, the purpose is not simply to learn Torah and work, for if these two do not weaken him to such an extent that he can no longer sin, then he will still come to sin. Rather, the aim is to toil and strain in Torah and also in work until both exertions remove thoughts of sin, right? It's very interesting because I've been preparing for this, but I'm currently taking a business, it's called B School, business school. Right now from Corona, this whole quarantine and homeschooling, I haven't had that much time to do it. But one of the most beautiful things that, and she's not Jewish, the person who runs the course, but one of the most beautiful things she talks about is our usage of our time. And it's so interesting how even in Shulchan Aruch, not even, Lavda, absolutely in Shulchan Aruch, one of the first things that it speaks of is that you should wake up with this feeling that the Eivashter is standing in front of you, the Eivashter is standing before you, and you should wake up. Not that an external thing should wake you up and whatever, the sun is too hot in my eyes. You yourself have such a strong sense of your mission and your purpose, whether it's being a mother with your baby, whether it's being a mother with all your kids, whether it's being right now in this particular time and stage, right now you're single, you have a shlichus to accomplish, and the whole world is waiting on you to wake up and come and do it. Let's do it together. So we need to make a conscious effort in what we do with our time. So we need to fill it with good things. I'm not saying you should be a slave and hate your life. We don't want to, as Shais Taub talks about in his Tanya courses, that you don't want to be a Jew that's a Chil Hashem. You're making a Chil Hashem by being miserable being a Jew. So again, we're not talking about being miserable. But if you appreciate that you have a purpose and these are the things you need to do in order to fulfill your purpose, then you have to get up with this rizzes, with this alacrity, with this oomph. I have something to accomplish. I need to get up and I need to do it. And so therefore, we need to use our time, especially now under quarantine. We have more time. Some of us do. We need to, and even the rest of us, you know what? I have less time, but I force myself to accomplish more because what do you mean? The Eibishter still needs me to daven. The Eibishter still needs me to run living Chassidus and teach classes in the morning and at night. And the Eibishter still needs me to take care of things. So I have to get up. What do you mean? I have to do these things. I'm not perfect. I am definitely not perfect. But this is what we need to strive towards. Right? This is not like let's chillax, because as we said here very clearly, the more we think about the less I do, so then it gives us more opportunity to not really accomplish what we're meant to accomplish. And chas v'shalom, we can have extra time to get ourselves into troublesome things. Just check the time. Okay. Okay, that was footnote 38. Okay, back to the regular text. It was out of compassion for man that Hashem has compelled him to be occupied with matters of this world and the next for all of his days, and so that he does not seek that which he does not need and which he cannot understand with his limited intellect, such as matters of what was before the creation and of the final end, since these things do not further his perfection, and on the contrary, they damage him. As the wise man said, also the toil of the world he has set into their hearts, so that man should not seek the deed which God did from beginning to end. Okay, so very, very, very interesting. I once met somebody who was a close friend who was a friend, and this particular person was a bacher, and he had a lot of time in his hands. He had a lot of time in his hands. And especially in that in-between stage of bacherhood, and not a job, but it was like an easy job, and like dating, but whatever. And at one point, he felt comfortable to just like have a farbrengen with my husband, and I guess with both of us, we were like together at a Shabbos meal. And he ended up saying, it was very interesting, he ended up saying that sometimes he just wakes up and he sits in his bed and he thinks, wow, does God really exist? Is he really here? Is he really there? Are we all here? If somebody else had different eyesight, would they think that this bottle was purple, or would they think that it really purple, or is it red? But maybe we all call it purple, but that person sees it as red. And he went through all these different ideas and thoughts and ponderings that he goes through. And we started laughing, and like at the end, Baruch Hashem, it was a very nice conversation, but we were just laughing at like, I don't have time to sit there and think about these things. Like I don't. And in reality, the Eibishter tells us what we should be thinking about, and not necessarily are these good things to think about. Again, yes, if that is something that you do think about. So Yossi Jacobson in the yeshiva.net has an incredible series on Emunah one-on-one, and of whether Hashem really exists and whether it doesn't, and all the questions, and he goes through them in depth. I haven't gone through all of them, but my husband Baruch Hashem really, really enjoys them, and he tells me all about them. So if that is something you think about, so then there are answers. I'm not saying that Torah is dogmatic and like don't think about anything else, because you might have a question that doesn't have an answer. I promise you, you're not the first person to think of such a question. You won't be the last person to think of such a question, and the Torah has answered it 1.5 million times. And for starters, a good place to look at is there. That said, the point we're trying to make here is the time. If we're constantly busy with doing something, we recently had a farbrengen, and somebody shared that she was really enjoying a particular stage in her life because she had all these beautiful projects that she was excited about. And she had a lot of different things in her life that were happening, and they would always happen around this time of year. And the more we discussed it, the more we realized that she has a bit of a low time during the summer because it's hard for her, because she doesn't have projects, or she doesn't have a sense of being needed, or a sense of feeling that she needs to accomplish something during the summer months. And it was very interesting how she was saying how her mood got affected and her whole being gets affected. So we have to realize that we need to fill our time with good things. We need to choose a time when we wake up. We have a purpose in this world. I mean, I'm sure if you have a flight to tomorrow morning, if somebody tells you, okay, well, we're not really flying in this quarantine, but if somebody were to tell you a few months ago that I booked you a flight to Hawaii and all expenses paid for 2 weeks to go and do your thing, you wouldn't just not turn on your alarm. You would turn on your alarm. You'd make sure to be at that flight perfectly on time, and you'd be packed and all ready exactly on time, hopefully packed. Some people have issues with packing, but you get what I mean. You would make it to that flight and you'd be there. So too here. The Abishur is giving you this incredible opportunity to accomplish the greatest potential of yourself. Imagine if you could really wake up in the morning and say, today, I'm going to be the greatest potential that I can fully accomplish of myself. You would wake up with a whole different oomph. You would wake up with a whole different attitude. So too here. Make sure we fill our time. And again, we're talking particularly about livelihood, but livelihood especially we're speaking to a group of women, livelihood may also mean your particular shlichus in this world, regardless of whether or not your husband is the one really bringing in the paychecks or not. Okay, we have a bit of time. So, any questions? I know this is recorded, but I feel like I've been rambling. So, okay. So, page 37. Yeah, page 37. When Hashem removes the burden of earning a livelihood from man. Okay, so there is a time, which is funny because through different times in our lives, my husband and I have looked into different, we learn about a lot of different things. And one of those things was parnasa. Why is it that some people have it easy? Why is it that some people have it hard? Why is it that some people, even if they have a lot of money, they always seem like they're struggling? Or even if they don't have any money, some people seem like they have the happiest, easiest life. And one of the things which we're going to discuss in here happens to be with our mindset. Whether we live a mindset of prosperity, whether we live a mindset of, or the opposite, whether we live a mindset of having in our minds, we need to go from paycheck to paycheck or never have enough. So let's take a moment to think about ourselves and think in regards to parnasa. Do I feel like I always need more? Do I feel like I'm always, or do I feel like I live a happy life regardless of how much money there's in the bank account, how much money is available? So it's just take a moment to think about it, and we're going to discuss it further as we continue in these chapters. Okay. If a man strengthened himself in the service of Hashem, resolves to fear him, trust in him for his religious and secular matters, steers away from reprehensible things such as anger and arrogance, strives for the good middays, for the good character traits, does not rebel in prosperity, nor turn towards leisure, is not enticed by the evil inclination, nor seduced by the witchery of this world, then, that's the unsaid word, the burden of exerting himself in the means to a livelihood will be removed from him, since the two reasons mentioned above no longer apply to him. Namely, number one, which is to test him on his choice and to protect him from, and number two is to protect him from rebelling during prosperity, right? Sorry. A good example, we just finished Purim. Achashverosh did his ginormous party for days and days and days and days and days long, and it was just prosperity, and people that joined, they stopped thinking about Hashem. So if we are if we put ourselves and we really trust in Hashem, not just for religious matters, not just Hashem's going to help me with my tefillahs and my davening and my tehillim, but Hashem's going to help me begashnis, which we've been working on for the last 36 pages, right? So too, and we work on staying away from negative things. And again, we're not expected perfection. We're expected to try. So the fact that we're trying to do good things and all of this, so therefore Hashem doesn't need to test us in these two things. Hashem is able to give us a peace of mind because we put ourselves, our mindset in regards to our livelihood, our mindset in regards to our gashmis and our ruchnias is a calm, it's at peace because Hashem is going to take care of us. There was a time when we were considering, or we did for a while, go to like a financial advisor and whatnot. And since then, we've learned a lot more, and Baruch Hashem, we found our own financial, system that works. And Baruch Hashem, we're happy with it. But it was very interesting because this particular financial advisor seemed to be very controlling about everything. I'm not saying about the money, but it seemed like her mindset, in my opinion, was very like specific about things. And I kept telling my husband, like, at the end of the day, we didn't end up continuing because we both felt like there needs to be there needs to be a ginormous amount. Yes, we need to do our part, and we need to make sure that we're making enough parnasa, we're making our budget is clear, and everything goes in and goes out as it's meant to. But we can't forget that the Eibush is the one that gives the check. We can't forget that the Eibush is the one that's going to provide. We can't forget that the Eibush is going to, for every baby, as it says, every baby brings its own lechem, brings its own bread, its own parnasa, and for every situation, there is a magic that we have to constantly remember that the Eibush is in charge. So again, I'm not saying don't use a budget, and I'm not. And everybody who's heard my rants about finances, I have amazing books that I can suggest for everybody to read, and they're really good. But again, it's keeping in mind first and foremost that the Eibush is in charge, and that Hashem is taking care of you. And once you have that, then you can continue on with the rest of your work. Okay. His livelihood will come to him without strain of the heart or toil of the limbs, according to his needs, as written, God will not bring hunger to the righteous. And if one asks, behold, we see some tzaddikim, very righteous people, which do not receive their livelihood except after hard and strenuous toil, while many transgressors are at ease, living a good and pleasant life. So it's a good question, where we're being told plain and clear that the Eibusher is that as long as we do our part and we trust in Hashem and we know full well that Hashem is taking care of us, then Hashem can take away that the strain of making a livelihood. But we see clearly that some people who do not good things have a jolly time with their livelihood, and other people who do amazing things, then they can also struggle. Okay, I want to read footnote 39 before we go into that question. I forgot to stop there. I want to read footnote 39. The witchery of this world refers to worldly pleasures which spellbind the eyes of one who gazes at them until he thinks they are good for him, but he does not realize their ultimate end, right? So it was interesting. We were recently having a conversation. I think I spoke about it in a previous class. We're having a conversation with our oldest son who said he wanted something. He wanted, a specific thing, or he wanted to buy it. My husband was having a faring with him. It was very interesting to listen about how it's a valid desire, so to speak, but just have in mind that happiness doesn't come at the end of having that thing. Our eyes, every time we see something new, oh, I want that. And every time we see something new, that's the billboard industry and the ad industry, especially online. It's $1 million ordeal because our eyes help us see all these things that suddenly we want. And my husband was saying that we have to separate our happiness from whether we get it or we don't get it. Because what happens is sometimes, and I'm sure many of you know this, sometimes you have this desire for this one thing, you finally get it, and then it kind of, you use it and you get into it and whatever, and then it tends to sit on the shelf for a bit and we may forget about it. And we were happy for that split second until we see the next big thing we need to go to. So it was a very, very interesting thing to have a conversation with an almost 7-year-old about that. Okay. Since he no longer needs to be tested because his heart has already strengthened in the service of Hashem, and he is full of fear and trust in him, and also he is not liable to rebel, so why should God trouble him further? This is another great principle. If a man thinks for whatever reason he no longer needs to engage in the pursuit of livelihood. Wait, I think I just read that wrong. If a man thinks for whatever reason needs to engage in the pursuit of livelihood, this is only justified if he is clinging to Hashem, not because he merely trusts in Hashem. Many people mistakenly think that the amount of hishtadlus, exertion of livelihood, is proportional to the amount of trust a person has. This is not correct. Okay, we're going to explain it. A man can have great trust, but if he has not yet reached the level that he is straining himself as before, or it is still necessary to test him whether or not he will do only the will of Hashem, and even if he has much tranquility, he is still under obligation to exert himself in his livelihood. So again, exert himself in his livelihood means to do the best to do your purpose. It doesn't mean stress out. Again, I want to make that very clear. It means do your part. If your job tells you to be there at 9 a.m. and to finish at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, you need to be there at 9 a.m. and to finish at 4 or 5 o'clock. You have to do your part. It doesn't mean stress out, because then you're not trusting in Hashem. It's two separate things. But again, even if he's super lax, and he's so lax that he's skipping work, he may have missed the point. In our times, if one learns in yeshiva or kollel and has some sort of plan on how to support himself and his family, this is considered Torah study with work. So anybody, I know many people on this call are single. If you've thought about kollel and you've had ideas about whether or not, you should have in mind that being in kollel and spending that quality time, setting the mindset and the groundwork of your marriage, that it should be, the minimum should be Torah study. So therefore, just the fact that person, that younger man learning in kollel, has an idea of what he's going to do after he finishes kollel, it counts as for him doing considered Torah study and work. For that which the sages said that one must combine Torah and work, their intent was not that every person must specifically work, but rather he has some sort of plan. Nevertheless, he is lacking the second reason, namely that one must strain himself and he has no strength left to come to sin. Therefore, he is under duty to strain himself in Torah study to this extent, right? So if kollel is an excuse to just scratch his head and then come home and not be tired because he didn't toil in learning Torah, so then he missed the point, and he still has enough energy to think about doing other things. So again, the point is to really be focused and to really make sure that we're doing our purpose in our time. And again, our purpose in our time might be me and mommy, and that's what we need to be doing, but we need to do it to the fullest extent as possible. We have to strain, we have to work hard to be the best mommy that we can be, or we have to strain out to work hard to be the best mora that we can be, or whatever our particular shlichus is, that's what we need to work hard at. Okay, so back to our question. Our question is, how come some people who seem so righteous and pious and they're perfect tzaddikim, they have to strain and they have to struggle with parnasa, and other people who aren't perfect tzaddikim, to say the least, they have it easy, right? So that's the question. On page 38 at the top, we will say, the prophets and the chassidim, extremely pious, already investigated this matter. One of them said, righteous are you, O Lord, when I plead with you, yet let me talk with you in your judgments. Why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why are all they happy? Okay, that deal with very treacherously, meaning the people that don't do good things, why are they happy? And another pasuk questioning this. Why do you show me iniquity and look upon mischief and plunder and violence as are before me, and the one who bears quarrel and strife endures. And another one. And for a wicked man surrounds the righteous, therefore justice emerges perverted. And why should you be silent when a wicked man swallows up one more righteous than he? And another one said, behold, these are wicked, yet they are tranquil in the world and have increased wealth. But for naught, I cleanse my heart and bathe my hands in cleanliness. And another one said, and now we praise the bold transgressors, those who work wickedness are built up, they tempt Hashem, and they have nevertheless escaped. And many, many, many more like this. So we have so many places in Torah, in Nach, where a lot of people question this. Why is it that the good prosper and the good struggle, and sometimes the good struggle and the evil prosper? Okay, very interesting answer. But the prophet refrained from giving an answer because each specific case has its own particular reason. It's kind of like those questions where you ask a klal about something in halacha that's like, no. Your particular question about your particular situation needs to be discussed, and that one has a particular answer that maybe is different from everybody else's. There is no general answer which includes everything. Therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu commented on this in the Torah, saying, the hidden things belong to Hashem, and the wise man said in connection to this, if you see the oppression of the poor and perversion of justice, perverting of justice and righteousness in a province, marvel not at the matter. So don't worry about it. It's not our job to be thinking about it, because every single situation has its own particular answer why it makes sense. And the verse says, the rock, his deeds are perfect, for all his ways are justice. In other words, ultimately, the matter is hidden and concealed by its nature, and it's beyond the powers of the human mind to grasp. There's a famous story. I recently read it in one of the Rebbe books. My kids have these like Rebbe's story books. I don't remember exactly who it was, but there was yeah, I can't. Okay, I'll have to bring it next time. But it's a really, really beautiful story about how an entire town. I don't remember who it was exactly, but it was a famous Lubavitch speaker, I'm pretty sure. And he got asked to come speak at a particular location. And I'm pretty sure it was in front of non-Jews. I'm pretty sure he was asked to speak in front of non-Jews. And I have to look it up, all the details. But he asked the rabbi whether I should go or not. Like, does it really make sense for me to travel all the way there and speak for this? And it was a little confusing what he should do. And so the rabbi said, don't only just go to this particular event and speak, but you should tell this particular story. So he said, okay, the rabbi sent me here. I did it, and I went. And he went and he sat at this event, and he spoke at this event, and he told this particular story. He said that there once was a man by the name of so-and-so, and he was known to be a very stingy and not nice person, and he wasn't known to be the nicest person in town. And that man, when he basically didn't treat people very nicely. So what happened was that suddenly he passed away, and everybody was so disliked him so much that they actually just kind of like buried him in some corner in the cemetery. If you know the story better than me, please correct me, but I'm pretty sure this is what I remember. And as the time went on, suddenly certain people who were big virim that would give a lot of tzedakah stopped giving money. And at one point, the beggar would come to the baker and say, "Oh, what happened? You used to give me a donation." And then the baker had said, the person who used to like just out of the blue randomly drop off money in front of my store early in the morning, it suddenly stopped. And slowly but surely, a lot of people started realizing, 1 second, all the big donations that were happening that were keeping the town going, out of the blue stopped. And the Rav realized that this person who seemed to be so stingy and he seemed to be such a bad guy and everybody hated him, he actually was the one. He had a lot of he was very humble about it, and he just didn't want to give face to face, and he did it in all these kinds of ways. And the Rav asked that that when the time comes, he should be buried next to this particular man's. Anyway, point is that the shliach, the Rebbe shliach, who was sent on this mission, said the story, and then at the end of the event, somebody came over to him and said, "Rabbi, you have to repeat that story." So he repeated the story for that guy, and then he said, "No, I have to hear it again." So the shliach said, right now, like I need to go to I have to get going, but I'm at this hotel, at this particular room. If you'd like to come tomorrow, I'm happy to repeat the story again for you. Turns out this guy he came and he heard the story again. And once he heard it the third time, he started crying and he said, I am actually Jewish, and my great-grandmother or my grandmother had told me this story about my great-great-grandfather, that he was this man. And I stopped keeping Judaism, and I actually became like some sort of priest of a different religion. But thanks to you telling this particular story in this particular event, I realized I'm actually Jewish, and this is my great-grandfather or my great-great-great-grandfather or whatever. And anyway, the point I'm saying this for is that it's a beautiful story. Okay, I'll read that after. But the reason I'm saying this story is because we may not realize that a lot of people thought this man was stingy and he was such a terrible person. And, I'm sure they did not view him in the nicest light. But in reality, we just didn't appreciate, or that the people in the town didn't appreciate how great of a person he was. And we thought that the evil man prospered. This person who was so mean and so nasty, he had all the money, and meanwhile, in reality, we just didn't know that he was actually a really kind and good-hearted person. So again, every single situation has a separate answer. Every single situation has different parts, and we may not understand the full extent of it, so we can't really judge what's the story with everything that's happening. So we shouldn't really spend the time thinking about it. Let me see what the next. Okay, let's just quickly do the last section. And then with this last section that we're here, and then we're going to be finishing up for, the next class is going to be also very, very exciting. Okay. Why the righteous sometimes suffer. So now we're back to page 39 on the top. Nevertheless, I saw fitting to attempt to clarify this matter that should be to some extent satisfactory, so that it wouldn't be so difficult. The possible reasons why a tzaddik is prevented from obtaining his livelihood without effort and must instead exert himself for it and be tested by it are as follows. Number 1, a previous sin for which it is necessary to pay him for it, as written, the tzaddik will pay in the land. So, so we're going to skip that. Number 2, in the way of exchanging to pay him for more good in Olam Haba, the afterlife, as it is written, to benefit you in your end, which is 49. So basically it means that if he goes through struggles now, the tzaddik goes through struggles now, so he's going to have a greater reward in Olam Haba. So that's number 2. Number 3, to demonstrate his good bearing and good acceptance of suffering in the service of Hashem, so that others will learn from him, as you know from the matter of Iyuv, right? So a good example here is, in my opinion, is Shal Mordechai Bashkin, who went through incredible amounts of struggles, and from everything I've heard about him and from every aspect I've learned about him, he's an incredible human being, and it makes no sense. Why is it that he had to go through such struggles and such pain? But in reality, you should realize he took his shlichus very seriously, and how much he's taught us all about living with Bitachon, and about he's made it a full thing that we should all learn how to deal with our struggles. So it's a good example. And number 4, due to the wickedness of his generation, Hashem tested him with poverty, hardship, or sickness to demonstrate / contrast his piety and service of Hashem unlike them. As written, indeed, he bore our illness and our pains, he carried them, right? So if other people in the generation are not doing such good things, but he goes through struggles and he shows how strong and how amazing his emunah and his bitachon are, and how much he handles them, so the rest of the generation, it can show us what needs to be done in contrast. Number 5, due to his not being sufficiently zealous and standing up for Hashem and exacting justice, in other words, protesting from men of his generation, as you know from the story of Eli and his sons, as the verse says, and it will be that everyone who is left in your house will come to prostrate himself before him for a silver piece and a morsel of bread. So, okay, so let's read the footnote because I think it explains it better. As the Gemara says, whoever can forbid his household to commit a sin but does not is seized / held accountable for the sin of his household. If he can forbid the men of his city, he is seized for the sins of the men of the city. If the whole world, he is seized for the sins of the whole world. Translator note, another reason for suffering explained by the Kabbalists is to rectify something done in the past lives. Most people are said to have lived previously in past lives, see Shara Gilgulim. So, for example, someone born to a life of misery and suffering for life, for example, the Zohar, for no apparent reason whatsoever, this may be in order to rectify something from a past life. For example, the Zohar states that the Jewish slaves in Egypt who bore and died doing hard labor, slavery work for Paro were reincarnations of the generation of the builders of the Tower of Babel. Wow. So basically, we have a shlichus to care for each other, to care not just for ourselves, and sometimes if we don't stand up and we speak up about what should be the right thing that needs to be done, sometimes we get put in the struggles of that. And now, it's a lot of talking. I really missed the class setting. Let me see if I have any questions or any comments. Okay, maybe you can send me that story. There's a story here, has to do with why good people suffer and why people prosper, with Eliyahu Navi and Rabbi Yeshua. You'll tell it to me, and we can try and share it at the next shir. And with that, I will say Mazel Tov. We're doing an amazing job. We are bringing Mashiach. We are working on our Bitachon, and let's keep going. Let's keep doing this. Let's keep doing our part. And I can't wait to see everybody in Yerushalayim very, very, very soon. Maybe right now.